Friends, welcome back to the Strong Life Podcast. I'm here with my friend, John Brookfield. John has been a big influence to me, and I, quote unquote, air quotes, met John in the early 2000s, coming across his work with seeing kettlebells and grip strength, and he's the innovator, the inventor of the battle ropes training system, which, like all things since the early 2000s, we've seen a lot of spin-offs, right, John? But there could only be one original, as I really like to hammer home. And a good friend of mine also, Corey Beasley, talks about you a lot. He came out and trained with you and really got certified in your methods. I think he went and stayed with you or trained in your backyard, and he showed photos. There's stones and bricks and poles in the ground for all the battle ropes. And I remember it just looked like such a place to build beasts. It looked great. So thanks for joining us today. It's been a while. We've chatted a bit here and there through email, but it's been a while since we've touched base, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So
time gets away over time.
Time gets away from us, and it's a little bit heartbreaking. And whenever I mention how my start happened in the early 2000s, John, it makes me realize, wow, 18, 20 years goes by in the snap of a finger. And so, I don't think I've heard too many podcasts or interviews with you that got into kind of your early history of training. People know you for the battle ropes and whatnot, and the grip strength, and you've written, I don't know how many hundreds of articles in Iron Mind, and you've got several books out, but what about, who was your mentor, John, who got you involved in understanding grip strength, full body strength, and back then we called it functional strength. So I'd love to hear that story.
Yeah, very interesting. As a matter of fact, very few people know this, Zach. Well, first of all, my father played professional basketball for about 12 years in the NBA. So I had a background in athletics. And we're going way back because he died 12 years ago and he was 90. Wow. So we're going way back to the old days. But he was a coach all his life. But I'm 61 years old now, but when I was probably 16 or 17, I went to high school in Greenfield, Indiana.
Okay.
And I don't remember the guy's name, but crazy enough as this sounds, this is how I got started kind of with the strongman stuff. There was a lumber yard right there in Greenfield. There was a guy, he was either 82 or 84, one of the two, but in his 80s, worked in the lumber yard there, and he actually bent 60 penny nails with his hands and drove nails to wood with his hands at 82, 84. And I remember that going there a couple times, and I saw him bend these nails and drive the nails through wood. And it kind of I don't remember the guy's name, but it just kind of got started right there. And I went and got some nails. I said, man, this guy's really strong. Plus, he's got longevity.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I started trying to bend nails. It all kind of got started right then, to be honest with you.
Interesting.
I got that goal. And like I said, my father was a professional basketball player. I was quite athletic, but my hands were actually pretty small and almost frail looking. So that was kind of like my weak link in the chain. So I kind of had a goal maybe a couple of years later. I want to try to develop the strongest grip in the world.
And what about weight training?
That story.
Yeah, and I've never heard that story. But what about, kind of conventional weight training with your dad being in the NBA? I mean, I often say, because I interview strength coaches, that, it wasn't really until essentially the mid 90s where coaches, or late 80s, early 90s, where coaches were like, you know what? Strength training is good because, even in the 80s, they were still saying, if you build muscle and then you stop, it turns to fat. So here's your father playing in the NBA. What was he telling you to do for athleticism?
Well, he was one of the rare guys, Zach, that had the opportunity to also play pro football if he wanted to, but he chose basketball. So in high school, my background was not actually traditional lifting, which you probably remember. I did a little bit of lifting, kind of like the bench press,
sure,
that kind of stuff, the curls, the shoulder presses back in high school, maybe till I was about 20.
Yeah.
And then from there, I just kind of moved on I saw more what we call functional strength. And we're going back, 41 years. The guys I remember back then that were strong were not the guys in the gym. They were guys that worked on the farm,
yes,
lifting stones and sandbags, that type of stuff. So that was kind of my background. I started really doing the steel bending, stone lifting, just things that were kind of functionally strong.
Right. If I think about, a book from the 70s, I think of John Jesse's. I've got on my bookshelf Wrestling Physical Conditioning Encyclopedia. So that book was written in 74, right before I was born, and he's training with sandbags and pinch gripping wooden blocks with weights attached to it. I don't know, did you come across a book like that before the early mid 70s?
Now, I remember that book.
Yep.
I remember that book 5 years ago, probably is when I introduced that. There really wasn't anything like that. I remember kind of studying some of the old time strongmen,
Yep.
but wasn't really any training. You know what I mean? It kind of showed some of the stuff they did, but there
Yes.
wasn't really any kind of roadmap. And I kind of seek God basically, and I don't know. He was just kind of showing me with the steel bending and stuff, and I just kept pushing and pushing myself, and little by little, I kept developing more strength and work capacity.
It's, interesting in that if I was listening to an interview with my friend, and he was in the NFL for 9 years, and he was just talking about hand strength and grip strength, and that how when he worked his hands very hard, not that it made the deadlift easier, the deadlift was always tough. He's like, but if we put a lot of emphasis on grip, our strength went up. And of course, looking at once the 80s came around, maybe the late 80s, early 90s, then the bodybuilders began using wrist straps to aid in everything. And I look at like the photos of Arnold's encyclopedia, they never wore wrist straps. And even Arnold at 6'4", or 6'3", was deadlifting over 600 pounds. And so the hand and grip strength, it seems like it was important during the era of Strength and Health magazine, or when some of those guys were putting out, like you said, booklets like Joe Bonomo and Bob Hoffman. But then the 80s came, and it was like train for show but not for go. And so in the 80s, did that influence you? Did you get away from the functional training?
I never really did. As people know, I don't have the bodybuilder look, and I got as high as about 285. Right now, I weigh about 220. I'm almost back down to my high school weight.
Wow.
But never got into the bodybuilding. I mean, just maybe doing a few curls here and there, but not with that thought like, hey, I'm going to really try to buff up for the beach or anything like that.
Interesting. Talk to us, now, John, you're in your early 60s. You said you're 61 or 62? 61. You're 220. Talk to us just about eating at this age. You've got a lot of listeners who are in their 40s, some in their 50s, 60s, and 70s. What was the nutrition change for you to drop the weight?
Well, I'm 61 years old now, and I think, Zach, when I was about maybe 51, 52, I was just always pushing myself as hard as I could go.
Right.
And almost every workout I did better. Then all of a sudden, just something kind of happened. It wasn't really like a health problem, but my body just didn't want to do it anymore. And little things just kind of started, like, fatigue and stuff like that set in. Like I said, no really health problem or anything like that, but my body just kind of said, hey, I'm kind of tired of doing this. So I started learning how to take care of myself. So I like to encourage people in their 20s, 30s, or even 50s. The thing is, instead of trying new stuff, we want to renew it, but we want to retain it. And so a lot of the mistakes people make is you want to train hard, don't get me wrong, but you got to get enough rest, you got to eat right, you got to hydrate right, and listen to your body. And I almost learned the hard way, but I was smart enough to kind of stop and say, hey, I just need to adjust what I'm doing.
Right. So it's probably been, you and I have connected sporadically through email through the years. So 10 years ago, you start feeling like being heavy and carrying around all that body weight's not feeling good. What was the specific changes to eating that you made, or just lifestyle in general with regards to sleep and training frequency? And did you connect with somebody else that inspired you, or?
Not really. Probably what I did, I used to eat like a lot of sweets and, too much meat. So I just cut back. Maybe I just started, just little by little, I started eating more fruits and vegetables, a little less red meat, a little less sugar. It doesn't take a lot, but little by little, Zach, one will go far, as you well know.
Yeah.
So just making adjustments here and there and just cutting back and just being smarter.
Okay. So,
but now, I mean, I'm 61 years old, and see, I do all barefoot stuff now. The only time I even wear any kind of I'll wear like a thin sandal if I go into Walmart or somewhere, but I do barefoot running. All my training is barefoot.
When did that start?
Probably I've been doing like barefoot walks and stuff and maybe hikes for 5 years. But for the last 2 years, I have not worn, other than, like I said, walking in, not to mention Walmart, but just for example, walk in Walmart or a restaurant, I don't wear shoes at all. I won't get great detail unless you want me to, but I can tell you how important just feet are.
Sure.
Because you probably know, but there's more nerves on the bottom of the feet, anyplace else in the bottom in your body. So your feet are like your control panel. So my glutes and my feet were quite strong, Zach, but they weren't communicating good together. I wasn't really having like traditional back pain, but just a little bit of hip issue and just things weren't firing. But when I start going the barefoot, what you'll find, your feet will tell your hips and your core when and how to fire, and not too much, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So probably one of the biggest tips I could give somebody is really start to little by little start to move into barefoot training, but not too fast.
Right.
And if I can give you some real specific tips on that, if you want me to, before we end. But yeah, go ahead.
How did it start for you? You're talking about going on walks. I think you live in North or South Carolina?
North Carolina. Yeah.
So are you in like the country type area, or like?
Kind of. I live in a small little village. It's Pinehurst. They call it a village. They play golf here, but it's a small little town. So behind my house, there's nothing but woods.
Okay.
So I started doing like a lot of barefoot walks, some training, but I was working a DOT contract where I had to wear kind of a Herman Munster, if you will, clunky boot.
Yeah.
Which kind of messed up my feet, but I've been out of that for a while now.
What's DOT? Department
of Transportation. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we had to wear like a steel toe shoe.
Sure.
That type of stuff. And, you can't find a good shoe. So, but now it's just all on like a natural barefoot.
Okay. And you started walking
also,
on
there's
grass?
a company out there.
You started walking on grass
actually just right
in the woods.
I just go right on the trail stuff in the woods. Yeah, right in the woods.
Interesting.
And then now I do running, or most of the time I'll hike barefooted. Sometimes I have to put on like a sandal just because of a lot of rocks.
Sure.
But that was kind of the biggest game changer. And how that started, Zach, to be quite honest with you, I just finished a book, Renew Your Youth God's Way.
Okay.
So I started studying back, Jesus in the biblical times. And if you look back then, they were either barefoot or like God created the foot.
Right.
Basically just natural without an arch support or a jacked up heel.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
yep.
When I started going all barefoot, my feet no longer were flat. I started to get a very, very nice arch. My toes started to spread out. And it just greatly helped my entire core.
It's interesting, too, because a couple days ago, I went back and reread JFK's article, The Soft American, and he talks about challenging the Marines to be able to take a 50-mile hike. And so one of the high-ranking Marines read the article, and it was something like near midnight. He immediately put it down and said, boom, out, taking a walk right now, no preparation. And it was that, to me, I'm always thinking to myself, can I walk 50 miles? And then now, with this whole quarantine and whatnot, it just makes me think a little deeper of like, okay, businesses are shut down. What if there's like, a real, like, what if there's a bomb that goes off and you do have to walk and you don't have the special shoes that you always wear when you're training, this and that. And so I love kind of listening to and, of course, digging into training with minimal support, seeing what your body can do without having all this help, whether it's a weightlifting belt, gloves, straps. You're talking about shoes here. And then you mentioned you did mention a special shoe or a shoe that you wear, maybe a sandal.
Yeah, I was getting ready to say, and of course, obviously, everybody can't be barefoot all the time. So you got to. Sure. Well, I was helping some friends sometimes on a landscaping contract, and of course, they don't want me to be barefoot.
Right.
So, but there's actually, and the company I'm going to mention, they don't even know who I am, so there's nothing. I'm not trying to promote their company, but there's a company called LEMS. It's LEMS, and they make real natural shoes. They got a thing called a boulder boot, which actually would go up around your ankle. It's actually so flexible, I could almost fold it up and put it in your pocket.
Okay, so, LEMS, L-E-M-S?
LEMS, yeah, they make like minimal shoes and even like dress shoes you could wear to the office.
Right.
Super, super flexible. They got really wide toe boxes, but if someone has to wear shoes, I would suggest them.
It's interesting. I interviewed like a physical therapist. He's more of like a performance therapist. A couple of weeks ago, he's out in Arizona. And he's saying so much of what you're saying about the training barefoot and kind of not really having like a program when you're working out, but seeing how your body moves. And you're talking about running now in your early 60s barefoot through the trails, I guess.
And when it probably took me almost 2 years to actually completely rehab my feet, Zach. And what I mean by that, I mean, in other words, a lot of world-class runners years ago got hurt when they tried to go to barefoot training because it sets your body different.
Right.
So you want to kind of ease into it because two things particularly will happen if you try to go really, really fast. It will lengthen your Achilles tendon, which is really, really good, but you don't want to do that overnight, obviously. And also your big toe, which is like I think they say 85% of your balance. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but the vast
Okay.
majority of your balance, it makes it more flexible, more mobile, and activates it. So those two things are great, but here again, you don't want to just go out and say, I'm going to go out and run 3 miles barefoot. You want to ease into it because you have all those ligaments, tendons, and muscles that's not really used to being used when you're
Right.
wearing shoes.
So, what did your kind of early training look like barefoot? Did you try jogging a little on the golf area?
Very, very, very interesting. And I actually mentioned that in my new book, kind of a protocol. But I actually, and I didn't learn this from anybody. This was just kind of, I felt like God was telling me.
Okay.
I walked, not at once, but I walked a little over 100 miles, just
Whoa.
kind of a slow, normal, not at once, of course,
Okay.
slow, normal pace. Once I did that, I kind of brisk walked over 100 miles. And then once I did that, I started to kind of maybe just start to slowly jog maybe a quarter mile.
And you started jogging on grass
Actually,
or
it was kind of
trail.
more of a dirt path normally.
I
Yeah,
love it. Very,
a,
very impressive.
more like a trail, kind of a dirt, sandy path.
Yeah.
And that might have been a little conservative. I don't know, but I had no problem with that. Like I said, I just you want to take your time. It's little by little one goes far, but it's training your feet like that. I can't tell you how much it helps because when you're walking around barefoot, even like a walk in the woods, you're actually strength training. I mean, people think, well, how's that strength training, John? But you are because when you're strengthening your feet like that, it's actually firing your glutes and everything, and you're developing a very, very powerful foundation. Um, I'll tell you something that this will amaze you, and I think I've only maybe told a couple people this, so this is not normal knowledge. Um, what I found, like I said, remember there's more nerves in the bottom of your feet than anywhere else,
Yes.
and that's a scientific fact. That's not me just making it up. I take like these creek stones or river stones. They're probably the size of maybe anywhere from the size of a golf ball to half that size. They're kind of egg, kind of like you put in a
Yep.
slingshot. And I pile them up like outside, like a little area, and I'll do kettlebell swings or push my barrels while I'm standing on those stones. And guess what? Over time, I found I can actually lift more weight, and I'm stronger standing on those stones than when I'm not.
Hmm.
And, and,
Right.
and here's why. It's real simple, but people don't think about it. So when I'm standing on those stones, they're kind of pressing into the bottom of my feet,
Right.
activating those nerves, and they're sending signals all the way up my body, all the way into my brain, telling my body how and when to fire. So there's actually there's more muscle and nerve activation on those stones than not being on those stones.
Interesting.
Now, the first time someone gets on them, you don't want to go out and try to do an 800-pound deadlift because you're not used to it. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? It's going to be almost like it's going to hurt your feet because I did a few studies. You could take some world-class athletes, Zach. Let's pick 20 world-class athletes that used to always wearing shoes.
Yep.
We could go out and actually we could go out and take those guys for a quarter mile or a third of a mile walk on a gravel road, the whole way.
Oh
They'll
yeah.
be sore. They'll be sore the next day, probably at abs and shoulders and their back. And here's why: because they're overreacting so much in their body,
Yeah.
too much, because of that feet they'll actually get sore.
You know what's so funny too is
Getting off
kind of
it's quite interesting stuff. Yeah.
yeah. It brings me so much to my mind is that 2 years ago I went back and I was teaching at the elementary level physical education, and normally kids are like, oh, if you have sandals, you can't play. If you don't have sneakers, you can't play. So kids were always, they were, I guess, used to the other teachers saying that. Kids had, we had a lot of immigrants in this school, and they'd say, Mr. Evnesh, like, I don't have shoes. Can I play? I go, guys, do kids play soccer in the street in other countries, barefoot, on dirt roads? Yes. I go, you can play. That's it. Like, we're going to play. You could play in your sandals. And there are, I don't know I just know seeing so much of kids playing in the streets or dirt roads, soccer. And so doing a lot of dynamic work on, a dirt road. And it shows how kind of scared we get, especially in America. We're like behind the times because I think we're just afraid of so much.
Yeah, well, why do we get away from stuff like that? You see my point? You know what I mean? So like I said, I've tried to renew, naturally the way God created the body, and then also in my book, I looked at basically how God created the body, and just so now I'm trying to go back to that almost like to a child would.
It's
And here
interesting.
again, I realize most people working a job, they can't always be barefoot, but you can definitely have a very, very flexible, minimal type of shoe on.
Now, like with your books, John, I know I've seen so many of your books on Iron Mind. I believe they've all been grip related. I remember you had all the DVDs on the battle rope system. And so this recent book, what's the title of your recent book?
And actually, I've got it right here. I don't know if you can even see it or not, but it's is that showing up?
Yep,
Yeah.
Renew Your Youth God's Way.
Yeah,
Yep.
so basically it's teaching someone how to step in their true destiny to be all God created them to be. Um, but when we're talking about the physical aspect, I really looked, how God created the body. And another thing, Zach, too, I'll just mention briefly. In this book, I talk about floor sitting and ground sleeping. If you look back in the old days, like Jesus and the apostles, or look at a lot of foreign countries, they spend most of their time sitting on the ground,
Legs
or
folded.
on the
Yeah.
floor. They don't sit
Right.
in a traditional chair. So there's a section in there about floor sitting, just how to ease into it if you don't do it. But just by doing these floor sits, how they would normally sit on the ground, just
How
relax,
how did
it
they
keeps your
normally
hips.
sit? Legs folded or kind of sitting
Yeah,
on their shins, stretching
yeah,
their
either way, yeah. There's 5 or 6 ways I show. The legs folded. I guess some people call it the Indian cross, or just
Yep.
or like a long sit where you're sitting and your feet are just straight.
Yes.
And there's just different ways. Side saddle. But what you'll find when you start doing that a lot, it'll actually mobilize your hips.
I got to start doing. I think to myself like, that stuff is tough for me when I'm sitting down, legs full, and every time I get up, I'm like, it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be hard. It
Yeah.
should feel. And I believe, um, you were kind of that. Remember those early kind of days of the Dragon Door community. The one guy, Kenneth, I forget his name, but he was big into the heavy kettlebell lifting.
Kenneth
Uh,
J, probably,
Yeah,
maybe.
Kenneth
Yeah.
J. And I remember what got him away from his heavy kettlebell lifting, and he was like chasing like a 500-pound Zercher squat, and he could like strict press the 106-pound kettlebell, very strong. What got him away from it was he said he was sitting down, I think with his son or like a baby with his legs folded, and he said when he got up, it hurt his hips and his knees and everything hurt, and he immediately said, "Well, this training is not good for me. It's just it," and I think he stopped, and I don't know what he does now, but I remember kind of from there he transitioned into a lot of aerobic capacity type stuff, got away from the strength work. And so how did it feel for you when you started sitting like this? Did it hurt your body? Because you said you weren't really doing deadlifting and stuff, but I didn't know you used the kettlebell, did kettlebell swings much either.
A little bit, or I use that for an example on the stones, or barrel lifting, or your ropes, or just body weight squats. But what I've found, if you look at the position of sitting, basically, if you, even though people are so used to doing it, it's just jamming your hip flexors and your spine together. It's almost like if someone's got you like in a passive cradle. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
If you really think about it, without pressing. So
sure.
you're just jammed up, and so no circulation gets in there. So what I tell people, I mean, a lot of people say, well, it's undignified to sit on the floor or it hurts. So I just say in my book, I mentioned just try it. Start with maybe 10 or 15 minutes a day. Just get down and, unless you got like a terrible pain,
Yeah.
just get down there for 10 or 15 minutes a day and make a commitment for a couple of weeks and start to try it and ease into it.
Yeah.
And little by little, you'll find it gets comfortable. It's going to mobilize your hips and take that pressure off your lower back. Also, the long sit, which if you're sitting on your backside with your leg straight,
Yes.
actually kind of puts your hamstrings in a mild stretch.
Yeah, I like this challenge of 10 to 15 minutes a day. Even, Dr. Kelly Starrett talks about just 10 minutes a day. He's like, you gotta make it. And are you friends at all with Donnie Thompson? He's in South Carolina. Do you know Donnie?
Uh,
Super D?
yeah, a little bit. We've emailed back. We're not like friends, but we know
Sure.
one that we've emailed back and forth a few times. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's quite the character. Yeah,
Quite the
yeah,
character. But I remember long ago, he said accumulate 10 minutes of hanging out in the bottom of a squat. And you
yeah.
mentioned kind of these early days of people eating or sitting, or they worked in those positions. And so they had healthier knees, hips, lower back into their later years of life. Whereas in
Yeah.
America, it's like the big issue is back pain.
Well, Zach, I mentioned too a while back. Standing is good. Like a work desk. One day I said a while back, I said I'm going to make a commitment. I'm not going to sit down once the entire day.
Are you standing right now?
And I'm sitting now the way
Me
I should
too.
be.
I normally
Hey,
stand. I have something where I prop up my computer on, but yeah, sometimes during the podcast I sit. Probably not the best either.
remember, do as I say, not as I do. No, I'm just kidding. So one day I made a commitment. Hey, I'm not going to sit down all day. I'll either stand or I'll floor sit. I mean,
Right.
if I want to sit down, I'll just sit in the floor.
Nice.
It's something you're not used to. But actually, when you start thinking about rehabbing the feet and mobilizing your hips, like before, you actually are strength training because you're actually setting your body for that foundation for everything to fire correctly.
Training is training, I always say. I think as we get older, we get less tied to if, if I'm not lifting a weight, I'm not training. It's very similar. You're saying like, look, I'm out walking. I'm getting stronger. Everything is training. And I don't know if you ever read the book Born to Run by Christopher McDougall.
I'm familiar with him. I'm familiar with the book. I'm not all the way through it, but yeah.
I kind of bounce around with books a lot, but what was interesting was how he spoke about what got him really interested in all this barefoot running, and I can't even remember who he was actually studying, but he said what he wanted to be able to do was to simply be useful. He wanted to be able to run or walk with groceries if he had to. He wanted to be able to chop wood. He didn't want to just be capable of doing deadlifts and overhead presses, yet my car broke down. Now I have to walk home. Oh, I can't walk. This hurts, or I have leg day tomorrow. He wanted to train to be useful, and I like that. But I'm gonna kind of like talking about this kind of training to be useful. John, like I remember reading about you in my early days. You're pulling trucks, yet you're talking about barefoot walking or doing a lot of grip strength, or how did you get your legs strong enough to pull a truck, with the rope?
Matter of fact, you almost read my mind because I was going to ease something into the conversation.
Yes,
so
go for it.
'cause most people don't know this. Like I said, about 3 years ago, I guess I was 58. We went back and my partner, two of us pulled the 40,000-pound tractor trailer a mile. I was 58. My partner was 63, 64. And so we, Fairmont, North Carolina, we actually pulled a 40,000-pound tractor trailer the full mile with no ropes. The last quarter mile was uphill, and we beat our old record.
Ropes meaning you have the
Harness.
harness.
Like they do in this, there's no harnesses, but no pulling ropes. You just all like a mule would pull.
So you're doing legs, all leg drive.
Just all legs, and we did it in 50 minutes and 54 seconds. And what was really, really cool, Duke University's Human Performance Lab, which is one of the best ones in the world, they actually came down and physically tested me and a bunch of stuff. But I was able to do that at 58 years old. My partner was 63. And so you think about moving forward, the most natural movement God ever gave us, and it'll never, never change. A lot of people say it's the squat, but it's not the squat. Walking or moving forward is the most natural movement we'll ever have. So basically, people say, what kind of training program to prepare for the truck pulling? I didn't even do any squats or deadlifts. All I did, I went out to the meadow and took probably about 500 to 1,000 pounds of chains, hooked it to my harness, and actually just walked and dragged it forward. That's how I trained for the truck pull.
Essentially like I'm dragging a sled with around my waist.
Almost like a mule pull a plow. Yeah, I had a nice pulling harness, and I just had a bunch of chains hooked out in length. And it helps you much, much more for truck pulling than deadlifting and squatting does, because once again, if you think about it, and a lot of, like I said, people will say the squat's the most natural movement, but they're thinking weightlifting when they say that. Right. But the most natural movement is just when you get up out of your chair, what are you going to do? I mean, you're going to kind of stand up, but you're going to take off walking somewhere.
Right. So John, but when you're doing the chain walking, you're upright, right? You're tall.
A little. You're going to be leaning some just because they're real powerful weight. Now, if I'm dragging 100 pounds, I'm pretty much upright. If I'm pulling that truck to maximum load up a hill, I'm going to be down more like a football player would be, trying to push someone on.
So it's interesting because, when you're doing the truck pull, you're almost in like about to get in a bear crawl position. You're driving on the balls of your feet. But if you're doing that kind of chain drag, you're probably more pulling like the heel hits the ground first, right?
Pretty much so, yeah. And here again, depends on the load. How
Yeah,
much weight I'm trying to pull. But I would go out and it depends on the day if it's real wet or muddy. But a
right.
normal day in that meadow, which is right down the street here from where I'm at now, I could pull 1,000 pounds for maybe a mile or two.
It's amazing.
Uh,
And what did the harness, what did you use? The one that Iron Mind carries?
Actually, a guy here in town, he's actually a leather maker. For horses. He works with
Wow.
draft horses. He
Yeah.
made me one much better than Iron Mind.
That
Excuse
is
me.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. And
That's
it was kind
great.
of funny because it went over your shoulders, like this, and so it distributed the weight very very well, Zach. It wasn't like all pulling down in my gut or my
Yeah.
shoulders. It's like it distributed my weight where my core activated.
Right.
In fact, this guy's built quite a few harnesses for people
Really?
that's come here for training. Yeah, and
Awesome.
he's not a training. He just makes it for horses, and he knows how to he knows how it works.
That's interesting. And I want to kind of back up. We're jumping kind of all around with like how do you say, like the timeline of all your training. So early 2000s, I came across your work, probably 2002. If you recall, Dragon Door had a forum. It was very active. And my friend Coach Ethan Reeve went through your certification in the early days when he was at Wake Forest. And so, you're mentioning kind of dragging chains. And I believe, did you also start the chain stuff similar to the battle ropes, or
Yeah, I kind of did in certain, like when you're outside, some of the exercise with the chains. I
yeah,
got a chain program called a chain reaction. You don't use it exactly the way the ropes do,
right,
but you can if you're outside, like on a farm or someplace.
sure. What got you into the ropes? How did that whole battle ropes creation come about?
We're right on the same subject, but people don't know that actually. I've probably done maybe 15-mile truck pulls throughout my years. Pulling a mile, a couple of them myself, and I see God. I was looking for a way, Zach, to be able to sustain physically and mentally over time. If you look at all the strength coaches, all the research now, there's really no way that people talk about how you sustain over a long period of time. So God took me to the flow of water, basically like hurricanes, like hurricane waves or water in a river. So I started mimicking the flow of water with those ropes. That's how it started. And I probably trained and researched about a year myself before I showed another human being. And I found by using those ropes, it was amazing. I could go back to almost anything and do better.
Who was the first person you showed the battle ropes to? Do you remember?
Good question. My first, the first person, I won't mention him because you won't know who he is, but my first three official presentations was the Cincinnati Bengals, the Olympic wrestling team, and a special forces unit.
Oh, who was at Cincinnati Bengals? Who was the strength coach there at the time?
Chip Morton, it was back in the
Yes,
day. Let's see,
yes.
Carson Palmer was the quarterback.
Okay.
Carson Palmer, yeah, Chip Morton, and of course Marvin Lewis was the regular coach.
Yeah,
Chip had my books and stuff, from Grip Strength,
sure.
and I called him up and I said, "Hey, Chip, you're gonna have to trust me. I've got a very unique training system that God showed me. I guarantee you it'll produce results." But I also asked him, do me another favor. Don't ask me a lot about it because I didn't want to get a preperceived idea because it's so different. He said, "You're on." He goes, "Come up," and
And and
he let me.
you went to Ohio, or he came to you?
No, I actually went up to Ohio, and he let me work for about 2 hours with like the linemen and 2 hours with the backs, and just went through all the ropes, and they all got smoked and couldn't believe how hard it was and loved it.
Right. Did you use the 2-inch rope with the lineman, or bigger rope, or what did you have back then?
I used part a 2 inch and part inch and a half. And I found later, which is interesting, some of the guys that got used to using the 2 inch, pretty good,
Yeah.
they got more tired using the inch and a half. Because what happened now, it put them in a faster frame of velocity and it wore them
Okay.
out.
And then what about the wrestlers? Did you go to Colorado or Michigan? I think Eastern Michigan had the training center.
I don't- Yeah, Eastern Greco-Roman wrestling. Yeah, he brought me up. Coach Ivanov,
Yeah,
you
Coach
probably know him.
Ivanov. Yeah. Oh yeah.
I've known him for years and years, and he brought me up a couple times, and he had me up there for a couple days. They really enjoyed that.
Yeah, and it's interesting too. Still to this day, I still see people using the ropes incorrectly. They're kind
Oh,
of
absolutely.
they
90% people probably do.
yeah, they lean back so much, so it's like not even on the ground. There's kind of no weight. What and then what would you like to talk about with regards to the battle ropes? Anything you'd like to share, or stories, or just anything within the umbrella of battle ropes?
But one thing I'll say about um, um, basically, if you do them right, because the kinesiology guys, the study of movement, found that they actually get lactic acid out of the body, so you're going to get a lot of results out of them. They're a fairly simple learning curve, and then the cool thing, we've not had one injury all the way. So you're piloting the plane; it can't impose its will back on you. So basically, the chance of getting an injury is about zero.
Yeah.
We almost had one injury down in Tampa Bay with the Buccaneers. Almost. A guy was running around out there and almost sprained his ankle on a bunch of ropes. But that was about the closest we've got.
Right. Well, I like doing a lot of the walking movements. So, like, walk forwards while moving, walk backwards, move laterally. And, of course, the forward walk makes the rope heavier. And then I'm sure, like, where you kind of tie it almost like in like a knot and you do all the pulling with it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. That of course the wrestlers really love. They love it all. They love the pulling drills because you can put your body in any position you can get in.
Yeah.
I mean, laying, standing, sideways. So you can get a lot of strength and power and a lot of injury prevention from pulling from all these different angles.
What? And then when you started getting into the ropes, what did you find was the big benefit? Was it cardio, was it aerobic endurance? Was it muscular endurance? What was the feedback that you were getting that you found was big benefit?
Real simple answer. A lot of people don't realize this. It basically will teach somebody to train or compete at a higher amount of intensity over a longer duration of time. Yes. So when you actually use the formula with the ropes, the way adults are adults, as you well know. But the way I try to teach the ropes, I'll guarantee it'll take the athlete or the person training. They'll be able to go much, much harder over a longer period of time. And it also teaches the mind how to relax under distress.
Yes, I found that also. And I have this around 2009, I was training a kid who was a Division I wrestler, one of the best wrestlers ever in New Jersey, never lost in high school. And there's a video of me just taking him through battle ropes for the first time. And he's like, he's breathing through his mouth so heavily. And I remember saying, Scotty, what you got to do is learn to have some relaxed intensity where you could just keep it going. And he learned to breathe better.
Yeah. Use your body almost like a wave or a whip.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times it was kind of funny because you'll see people, they get so much tension up around their neck. It's like they're trying to lift weights,
right.
And you want to just flow like a bullwhip or like the flow of water. And what's very, very interesting, I have not seen, and I apologize if I'm wrong, but for thousands and thousands of people that I trained and showed and demoed the ropes on, I didn't find, Zach, one human being, and I dealt with a lot of world-class competitors, I mean, in all walks of life, that could actually sustain probably a good minute. I mean, it was a missing link in training for everybody. There was no exception to it. Everybody got smoked. They got winded. It was just a completely missing link that we found.
Yeah. What you think some of the mistakes people use with battle ropes, kind of that you come across?
The simplest one, I'm not much of a YouTube person, but on the YouTube crowd, what you'll see, they have too much tension on the rope.
Yes.
So the whole point is to be able to have the rope slack. And have that slack on the ground, that's causing your force.
Correct.
And they'll back up where there's too much tension. They can't even create waves.
Yeah.
And you see a lot of people that are not world class in the ropes, but you'll see world class people with followings actually doing that on a video.
Doing it incorrectly. Yes, you have to move forward, so a lot of the rope is on the floor, and kind of have this for people watching, it waves up. I start with my hands near my hips, and the majority of the rope is on the floor. I found also, John, I used it to help, I hate, I'm not a physical therapist, so using the word rehab, but I had a shoulder injury, and doing a lot of the circular motions with different grips helped my shoulders feel better. And I do them, supinated, pronated, circles going over, circles going in and out. It helped my shoulder.
Well, I'll tell you two things on that. And I guess I can quote the person because he gave me a testimonial on it. But if it's on my website, Louis Simmons told me himself that was the only thing that actually rehabbed his shoulders.
Yeah.
He said he rehabbed his personal shoulders with the rope training. And then Dr. Davis Coe, which is kind of a world-renowned physical therapist from Irvine, California,
Hmm.
he actually uses the ropes to rehab a lot of professional athletes' shoulders.
Yeah, if
I'm
done
not really sure how
correctly.
he goes about it. It's not my forte, but he's found phenomenal results just rehabbing athletes with the ropes like that.
Right. What now, John? We've been talking about ropes, walking, nutrition. What's a daily routine look like for you nowadays?
Most of my own, I like to do quite a bit of cycling, running. My strength training kind of basically, I'll use like a 30-pound sledgehammer and beat it into a tire for
Yeah,
maybe 30 or 40 minutes. I kind of use that for my strength training.
really.
Yeah,
Different
so
30 to 40 minutes. Don't you do you get bored? Do you switch it up to keep it exciting?
not really. I mean, I'll just, I might bash it for a minute on, right side and
Sure.
change over to the left and just it's kind of boring, but it gets good cardiovascular, it works your entire push-pull system and your rectors. Really,
Right.
really good.
And did you have that hammer specially made a 30 to 40 pounder? Is it like a steel shot one that you could load?
I've actually got one 50 and even 70. There's a company, they're out of business. They're Torque Athletic.
I
Uh,
remember them. Yeah. What?
they're, they're
Yeah.
long gone, I think, but yeah, I got a 70 from them, a 30 and a 50, and I still have those.
I remember them. There's just now there's so many people making equipment that, as you know, the marketing behind it is what like you need to have almost like a marketing team, or you need great marketing knowledge, and you have to constantly put out these high
Oh,
quality
yeah.
videos
Yeah.
for people to find out about that stuff. So I remember Torque making a lot of unique grip uh, tools.
I think there's probably some people who make some heavy hammers, but not as heavy as they made. You
Yeah,
know, I'm not even sure who makes them anymore, but I'm sure they're out there.
yeah,
But sledgehammer swinging for myself, I found that it's probably definitely one of the greatest exercises. If you look at just striking a tire over and over and over, you're almost working your entire body. Of course, it's cardiovascular. You're working your core. I do it barefooted. Your
yep.
feet. You're pulling, pushing. You're getting your shoulders push pull.
Squat a little bit, you
Yeah,
rotate a little bit, you're getting shoulder mobility, you're getting, of course, a lot of grip work. Yeah,
really big bang for the buck. Really big
yes.
bang for the buck.
I'm inspired now. I have a heavy hammer at my gym that a buddy of mine made that we could kind of unscrew and add sand
Yeah,
to it or anything. Uh, to me, my one gym is right next to a machine shop, so these guys,
yeah.
yeah, they give me. I had next to a machine shop, and a good friend of mine is a welder, so I'm always like my brain kind of turning. So, let's get back to your daily routine. What time do you wake up in the morning, and do you eat breakfast, or do you skip breakfast?
Uh, it kind of varies. I get up usually till about 8 if I don't have to. I'm not a real early riser. I'll get up and I usually have like a big kind of like a NutriBlast. I'll put like a couple fruits and vegetables in it, maybe like that, and then I'll use some whey protein,
Yeah.
some superfoods, like chia seeds, maca, some
Yes.
collagen, kind of like a really nutritional blast,
Yep.
stuff like that. And I use that in the morning with a little bit of granola, and basically that holds me for gosh 5 or 6 hours, no problem.
Nice until like a early afternoon dinner, I guess.
Something like that, yeah. So I've been doing that for a few years now. It makes a big difference, yeah.
Right. And then what's a dinner look like for you?
Just some chicken or some fish, and I try to get a bunch of vegetables. And I drink mostly water.
Uh huh.
I'll drink like maybe one unsweet tea. I use just a little caffeine, but I'm pretty much all water drinking.
Oh, what about coffee or tea in the morning?
I've never had drink coffee. I never have.
Really, that's
So
great.
maybe a tea at lunch, unsweet tea.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I haven't drank coffee for about 2.5 years. I drink tea in the
yeah, yeah.
morning. Yeah, I feel great. I don't have the crash or this urge to want my. I used to drink coffee, and it's like I needed another cup of coffee at 3 or 4 o'clock. And when I've said this to friends, who are love coffee so much, they're like, "Why would you ever want to stop drinking coffee? What's wrong with you?" And I said, like, anything that makes me feel like I need more of it, I don't like it. It's like,
Yeah.
and it's to me, it's out of balance if I feel like I have to have another one just to function properly.
Another thing I'll just kind of mention, if I may, talk about training routine that
Yes.
I started getting into quite a bit of balancing just a while back. Some slack lining and a wobble board.
Yeah.
And for me, I found this is me now at 61 years old. I found like when I got like on a slack line or like a wobble board and balanced with one foot, that was the greatest thing I personally found, Zach, that actually made my foot and my glute work together. Like completely balanced out the body, because it was like it's really really hard strength training if you get like on a wobble board or slack line on one
Right.
foot, try to balance for 2 or 3 minutes. Of course, there's probably some young guys out there, their bodies line real perfect, they don't notice it
Yes.
much, but for the average person, that really really fires your glutes and your entire core. Um, but it worked very very well for me, just kind of helping muscle imbalances.
Right. And cycling, you mentioned. I guess you're on a road bike, or are you on like a
I
hybrid mountain road bike?
I use a mountain bike on the road. Um, and so cycling is really, really good, but you have to remember over a long period of time that you're kind of in it kind of jams your hips, because you're seated.
I rode
So,
yesterday, and I'm feeling it. We did about
yeah,
3 hours of mountain biking, and my
yeah,
back
yeah.
was pretty sore.
So
Yeah.
when I get off the mountain bike, I like to kind of do kind of like a lot of maybe, it's not really like yoga, but it's almost kind of like a combination of the Cobra and then like the Hindu push up.
Yes.
I might
Yeah.
do about 100 of those just to kind of like really get my back,
Good.
use the extension in my back just to kind of loosen it up after that.
Right. And if I think about like photos of your training from the articles that I've seen you written for so many years, I mean, there's a lot of stones and bricks in your backyard. What's the backyard gym look like today?
It's a little different now, just because we have a pool back there now. So some of the stuff kind of got churned up. But yeah,
Yeah.
I still got some stones back there on the side of the house and some stuff like that. Yeah,
Are you
yeah.
still doing the stone lifting or not as much?
Once in a while, not a whole lot. I'll tell you a fun little game though. Because I know, I've never really shared this with anybody else. Not that it's a deep secret. But I had a few guys here in town. They weren't anybody you'd know. They were just kind of like farmers, guys like to train.
Yep.
We had some big heavy stones, just natural stones,
Yes.
and we played like little games like chess or tic tac toe with the stones. Like we'd actually like set it down a particular place and like
Yeah.
try to trump somebody else's stone.
Yeah.
It was just kind of a really really fun little mental game where you had to lift the stones.
Right. It's basically you're doing deadlifts and carries and even kind of like a little bit of a power clean when you have to pick it up and
Yeah,
get it under you. You
yeah,
know,
it's almost like a chess match or checkers with stones. Yeah.
I love it. What about some books that you've read, John, whether it's a training book or life or any kind of book that you've read that you really, I gift people Stephen Pressfield's Turning Pro a lot. I love that book. But has there been any books that you really love that you go back to or that you gift others with?
I'll be honest with you. I spend most of my time actually in the Bible, just actually studying the Bible and God's Word,
Yeah.
because it's so vast. People don't really realize. I mean, all of God's Word. But you go back to the Old Testament, there, people just think it's history, but it's God speaking, and there's so much health in the Bible people don't even realize.
Who
And so,
got you into, did you get away from reading the Bible and now you got back to it, or was
not
this
really.
always?
I've always been pretty active. I see God. There's a scripture in the Bible that says He renews your youth like the eagles in Psalms 103, and I really seek God for the last 5 years of what He was talking about, and through prayer and His Word, and that's kind of what this book is about: how to renew your youth God's way. So there's tips how to renew your youth, but also how to retain it over time.
Yeah,
And of
we
course, a
were
couple of the ones that I just gave you was the feet, and then of course the
feet.
ground sitting and decompressing your spine, that type of thing.
That's going to be great stuff. Like I told you right before we recorded, a lot of my listeners are somewhere around my age, plus or minus 10 years old, and they talk to me a lot about that. And I say, look, I'm not chasing the numbers anymore. I'm just not chasing a bigger deadlift or a bigger squat anymore. And then what hit me was, can I walk 50 miles?
Yep.
Am I useful, like Christopher McDougall said, and Born to Run? Car breaks down, can I walk? And I like to ride my bike a lot. I have a beach cruiser for in town.
Yeah.
And what it reminded me of was my grandfather never owned a car. And when I would go to visit him, he lived in Israel. I remember when I was a kid, we went to the doctor. He just sat me on the back of his pedal bike, and he never stopped. I remember him pedaling me uphill, and he just stood up on the bike and powered through. And I think to myself, my grandfather must have been, 70, 80, and he's riding his bike and walking. It was like walk, ride,
Yeah. Yeah.
walk with groceries. And we're really so lazy. Americans we've gotten so lazy. Everything's so convenient. It's very bad for the health.
Well, I'll give you an example too. Like I talk about it in the book, but basically it's in God's word because you remember Moses, but Moses' strength actually equaled his days. It said he died at 120 years old, and the day and minute he died, he had his natural eyesight as his youth, and he had his strength of his youth.
Hmm.
And people say, well, what did Moses die of? Well, he just fulfilled his days. He fulfilled his assignment, and God took him. So basically, his strength equaled his days. Which, think about that blessing that is. But we can have that same ability as well. Whether if we're 80 years old or 90, our strength will still equal our days, or we can still have our natural strength and energy at a great, as we age like that. So a lot of the stuff in the book is about how to do that.
I like that. Where is your book on your website, Amazon? Let's talk about where people can connect with you, John.
Yeah, let's right now. I'm doing some new websites, but just on Amazon. If you just go to Amazon, books, and just renew your youth God's way, it'll pull right up. Great,
very good. Oh, go ahead. People ask you.
I was just going to say one thing real fast. People
Sure.
A lot of times they'll ask me who's the fittest person. Basically, is it someone that won the CrossFit Games, is it a decathlon gold medalist,
Right.
or Ironman? I said the fittest man in the world would have to be at least 80 years old, and the reason I say that because it's longevity. See what I mean? So you might have a guy that's 85 years old that's never been injured, still real fit. He would win the contest because we want to finish the race well and have longevity, right?
Longevity is the ticket. What's your website again, John? JohnBrookfield.com?
The JohnBrookfield.com. Yep, that's my new updated one.
Okay. And are you still involved with the battle ropes? I mean, there's so many companies that have kind of come in, and these big companies swoop in and take stuff. So I need people to know.
I still,
yeah.
I don't do it as much as I used to, but I mean, we still sell them. Some companies, still vend my ropes and stuff,
Yes.
and
That's great.
I don't ship them myself, but you can go on my website or different companies and still get them. Yeah.
Good. I'm gonna when I post everything on my website, I will link back to the Amazon books. Are you still writing for Iron Mind?
No, I really don't. I've kind of. I mean, I'll speak from time to time, but I don't.
Right.
I think they stopped doing their Milo. They don't have that magazine anymore.
I think they did. They stopped Milo, and I'm part of a group on Facebook for like vintage strength collectors, and somebody was selling all their Milos, and I was like, I remember all of John's books. So your books are available on Amazon website, and people could reach out to you through your website, johnbrookfield.com.
Exactly. My email is right there. So if anybody's got any questions, I encourage you to email. I'll definitely try to get back to you.
Great. John, this has been great. It's been great to reconnect and chat about this stuff. I'm excited to pick up your book. And everybody watching and listening, Strong Life Podcast, please share with a friend. Leave a 5-star review. That helps us so much. And pick up John's book and do what I do. If you love the book, get 5 to 10 of them and gift the book to somebody. I've always said a great book changes lives, so it's been great. Any last words, John, before we shut it down?
Well, no, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much. But longevity is the way to go.
Very true. Longevity. Thanks, everybody. And John, just hang tight, okay?